I have a few comments about our chapter 5 and 6 responses, which you did in the assignment mode, and basically as a group you really did quite well. I think everybody kind of understood these concepts, or at least got into the textbook and found where they were explained. And some of the things that we talked a little bit about, the first question was about the benefit theory, and the book talked about this, and several of you made the comment about it. For example, the gas tax, and that those used the highways the most would probably use the most gas. So that was the person who should benefit the most should pay the most. I don't think you had any trouble with that. And then there was a little discussion about vertical and horizontal equity. And I think most of you understood that, but basically with the horizontal, you're talking about everybody being taxed at the same level. And when you talk about horizontal and vertical, you really the issue is distribution. Where does the money go once it's received? And with the vertical, why more money is going to go to schools, for example, that have greater needs. And our basically, as I go to, I'm going to really skip to question 4. We talked about Omaha, Lexington, South Sioux City. Those are all school districts that have some minority population, has a substantial number of students are considered in a poverty situation. So those districts, of course, are supportive, and actually, a few years ago, did sue the state. That was resolved later with some of the legislative action. But basically, the concept was that with vertical equity, you'd spend more money on students, minority students, spend more money on poverty students to try to address the needs that those school districts might have. So really, when you look at the Nebraska state aid formula, that's a major factor. Is you'll find that there's a factor of poverty and percentage of minority students that will weigh into how much state aid you will receive. There was some discussion about a progressive tax and what the advantage of a progressive tax is, and basically a progressive tax will tax the wealthier people at a higher rate. And the concept is that it will be the middle class and lower class are going to be spending much or most of their money on goods and services and just maintaining a lifestyle, where those who have more money would have some discretionary money, and that's probably where some of that should come from. I think you all understood the advantages of that. We talked about the different types of taxes, and one of the things I want to make sure people understand, we're talking about Nebraska taxes, is that the state collects sales taxes and they collect income tax, and then those amounts are redistributed to school districts based on the district's needs, as we talked about earlier. The state, excuse me, cannot assess property taxes. That's a local or a regional. Your local school district can assess property taxes. Your service unit can assess property taxes. Your city can assess property taxes, but the state cannot. So the big three for school funding, and the biggest one usually is property taxes. And then the sales tax, of course, comes from money that's spent purchasing items, and then the income tax based on what people make, and then that is all redistributed based on the Nebraska formula that we talked about. And school districts with greater needs, less property value, are going to get more state aid. Some of the taxes, as far as we talked about, some advantages and disadvantages, and of course, we talk about sales tax. People say, well, those that spend the most will be taxed the most. And we talk about property tax. um, we'll say those that own the most will be taxed the most. One of the difficulties with property tax, although it's the most stable tax of all, because somebody is going to pay that tax, but oftentimes property value goes up, but the income from that value does not. I think the textbook talked about a rental property that's not bringing in as much money as it used to, or farm land may go up, but corn prices may not, for example. So those are some things about a sales tax that can be a negative. Some people feel like the sales tax, a lot of it comes from the Omaha-Lincoln area, and then it's distributed out to the smaller schools in the state. Other people will say, well, the state, the outlying school districts have all that farmland, all that property values, so they're coming out okay, and perhaps they are. The let's see, what was the other issue? I think you all talked about. One thing I would mention is a tax that we don't have is a gambling tax. Although we have lottery and there's some income from that, basically direct income. But if you go to a casino, which I've done a few times, and you go over and take a look at the cars in Council Bluffs, for example, they're very high number of Nebraska cars in that parking lot, and the money that's lost in those casinos is taxed. The profits, the casino is taxed on its profits, and so Nebraska doesn't gain really anything from that. And I'm not in favor of increasing gambling in Nebraska, but if I were going to have a decision where I was going to be the czar of education, I would propose a bill that said you could have 2 casinos within a mile of the Missouri River, so that some of that Iowa money would come over to Nebraska and it wouldn't really increase the amount of gambling going on. But overall, I think you all kind of understand the assignment mode, and you're doing a pretty good job with that.